Hello, guys. This is Mridul Bansal, and I'm back with yet another podcast. Today, I'm talking about something that really is very close to all of our hearts, something that most of the Indians and even NRIs and those who are immigrants in this great country, the USA, often feel about, or those who are even in other countries outside their home country. They often think about, they often talk about in social circles, something that really touches everyone's lives, and that is to talk about going back home. It's always the fact that no matter how long we've been away from home, our roots always try to pull us. And that's where I wanted to bring out this podcast with the recent churn in the economy and all the issues with visas that people struggle with. I thought this is a good time to really understand more about the process, the decision-making process behind going back home. And why not discuss that with someone who has done that for a long time, like almost 8 years, an expert in NRI counseling. And that's where we have on our podcast show the guest today, Ms. Nupur Dave. Ms. Nupur Dave, just for a brief intro, is an NRI counselor, an author, and an ex-Googler. He lived in the US for more than 13 years and moved to India in almost 2016. Ever since then, she has helped more than 500 NRIs in making a decision to live, and her influential writing, I said she's an author, her influential writing has clocked almost 3 million views. Nupur has also worked with the Prime Minister's office in India, and she was the CEO of the Indian Googler Network and is a LinkedIn Spotlight awardee. She's currently writing her third book on the topic of navigating life for single NRIs, which is a pretty interesting topic. So, without spending much time now, I would like to dive right back into the topic for today. So, welcome, Nupur. How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, Mridul. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Yeah. So, again, I think, like I said in my intro, we want to talk about the life of NRIs and talk about going back home. So I've read your book and I've seen a bunch of your interviews also. I've been following you since so many years on social media and we sometimes interacted. So I wanted to understand for our viewers that what really is, what are the different reasons that you have seen so far? You have interacted with so many people that really press the people to decide about going back home. What are the different categories? What are the different reasons why? Yeah.
Absolutely, Mridul. So, based on whatever I've spoken to so many NRIs, I have a view on the backdoor conversation with these NRIs. And the interesting part is that the reason they may give the world about why they're moving back may not be the real reason they are moving back. And that is one thing that I really want to point out to a lot of NRIs that are listening to this podcast, because some NRIs start feeling like that either they are inadequate or their reasons are not the same reasons why their friends went back. And it seems like everybody else has such a smooth journey and a smooth, valid reason to move to India. But here is me being the NRI feeling stuck and confused about moving back. So I do want to pull out some common reasons that people actually move back for. Surprisingly high number of reason is because their visa is going to expire, especially those who've not been able to renew their visa. That's one reason, and that's fairly obvious reason to move back. Although the trend that I'm seeing amongst those people now is to move to Canada. They file a PR there in advance. The second reason is, just being so lonely and just not feeling at home in specifically the United States, but this is also true in other countries as well. The difference is that in other countries, they may be able to visit India more often than people in the United States. So that sense of hurt is not as bad as those who are in the US so far away, feeling like they don't belong. So that is a very slow burn, and it takes them a long time to make the decision to move. The other decision is kids. So actually you could divide this into two parts. One is those who have newborns or kids below the age of 2, where they are just simply overwhelmed by the amount of work and stress and pressure that they have in managing a job, a house, and kids alone in the US. So these folks move back because they get support in India. And then the other one who may have slightly older kids who've been through that phase of, the trouble twosome or whatever it's called. These ones are now starting to feel like, what, we need to give our kids an environment where they can know their country and their culture. And these are the ones who've been also thinking of moving for a very long time. And then they finally decide to move. And but the main pull is of a family in India, the parents aging. And so all of this comes together to become a reason for people to move back. Rarely other reasons of, I hate my job, so I'm going to move back to India. That's not reason enough to make them move all the way. So yeah, this is the long and short of it, Mridul.
Well, yeah, kind of makes sense. I mean, if job was the reason, I think there are short-term alternatives, like you also covered, that they can try to change the city, they can try to change the country, or they can change the job, obviously. So, I mean, I understand that those are short-term reasons. And you actually brought a very good point that parents with kids, in addition to visa, which is the obvious one, like I think the interesting part here is the parents with kids part, right? Because I think that brings a lot more into the equation. It's not just a one-person decision. It's more like how the kids would adapt, how the family would adjust to those changes. If the kids have been in the US for long, so like I was wondering, like, how does that equation solve? How do they deal with this emotional dilemma? Because getting back to India, having the emotional support, having the parental support, the support of family sounds exciting, but then it's more about adjusting back, right? What have been your understanding? What really helps people really come to that decision in this case, that with kids, because it's not just them.
Yeah, it's a very, very arduous and hard journey for NRIs who are married and have kids, because now it's not just you making the decision, and it's not just you and your spouse making the decision, but you also have to match your kids' school timings with the timings in India, as in timings is the admission cycle. So you find that people have been thinking for years before they actually make that decision, and then they're able to move to India in time. That's them joining of a school at the beginning of the semester. So you can understand that this is a very, very long sort of process with so many hurdles in it. Now, there are quite a few issues in the mix. One is spousal agreement. Spousal agreement is probably one of the biggest reasons why some people are not able to make the move earlier than they would have liked. I have noticed gender difference. Usually, I'm not saying this is in all cases, but it sort of leans towards when the husband, who may be earning more in the family as the head of the family, is not wanting to move to India. Many people end up not moving. But the other case where the wife is not wanting to move to India, they still end up moving to India with, giving some kind of cushion or a soft landing for the wife so that they feel more comfortable. So of course, there are all these combination of cases, but what I've just seen a little bit of tilt one side to the other. And the other thing is about worrying about, how their kids will fare. There's a timer going on in their head with respect to kids, that, oh, the child is now, you know 11 years old. By the time we move, the child will be 13 years old, and how will they feel? So that's another reason why they feel the need to make the decision earlier. But just to, wrap up the part about how are they coming to that decision, we have to understand that this is not a, oh, let's move to India next month
It's
decision.
not
This is,
binary. Yes.
yeah, they've been thinking about it for such a long time that it's taken them easily 2 to 3 years to actually come to the point where, what, okay, I'm now mentally ready to actually start making, inquiries and start finding information out. So that's the most complex. It's also like those who have families may have houses also. So for them, it's a real uprooting of lifestyle to move back. But so many people are so excited to go back. They're like, after so many years, we are getting to, spend time with mom, dad, or, eat vada pav, or have golgappas by the side, sit in Shatabdi with the kids. So there is also a section of the population that's more than excited to make this move.
Definitely, and you touched upon. I think that was very interesting. The bias is still tilting towards more like, okay. In fact, at least in US, a lot of families, well, there's still a huge cross section of families that are both earning, but still the decision making tilts more towards the men, which is pretty interesting to hear. And how about kids? Because, well, you talked about people like men and women of the family, but do kids have a stake in this decision making, or they just
Not
follow?
that I've seen. I've usually never seen people being so concerned about what their child will add into this. Very rarely have I heard even they don't even comment about it. So yeah, kids are not
So
really about giving their opinion.
they are doing for the kids, but yeah, they don't ask the kids.
They don't.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and it's a very interesting anecdote that I recently met a friend just last week actually who moved to India, and with both of the kids and his wife. And I think one interesting reason he gave was that the kids are fairly at an age like 3 or 5, where they can really get along well, versus if the kids are 8, 9, or 10, it really changes the equation for them, for the kids as well. So have you seen any such uh, any anecdotes or anything where you feel that, yeah, the kids' age really makes a difference because otherwise they'll come back? Any such examples or anecdotes if you may have, or otherwise?
Yeah, I have seen almost everyone give their formula for what age a child should or shouldn't move. And I find it really interesting, because how would they know? Like, how would they know? Have we done any kind of survey or statistical
Yeah.
analysis how a child is feeling? So people are just making their own assumptions based on extrapolating their kids' behavior and maybe seeing their relatives' kids or friends' kids. But here's the thing: everybody's journey is their own journey. And it is obviously going to be a problem if a child is in their teens, they have their own opinion, they have their own
Yeah.
friends, and they move here. The only thing that parents can provide is sort of that environment in school where they can make friends who understand the where this child is coming from. And in a lot of big cities in India, you have many expat kids. So
Hmm.
you can spend that money and put that child in an Ivy school and make
Yeah.
them comfortable in that kind of environment. There will be challenges. I personally have not been told of a case other than one where a child had particularly bad allergies in India, and they had to move back because the air quality was not suiting the child. So that
Hmm.
is a bit of a medical issue. And I've also seen even something with autistic kids. I've seen people who have moved here with an autistic kid and found specialized help and support in India for that child. So that is also not a reason, for not moving. But in general, what we've seen is once kids find friends, they are okay.
Yeah. So, regarding the people or kids with that require special assistance in general, autistic or even other medical assistant, right? Are you saying that, for example, autism in that case, are you saying that people find it more convenient in India versus US and that's why they decide to move to India, or you're saying the other way? Probably I didn't understand.
No, what I'm basically with respect to this particular thing is that whatever you really want to find in India that may replicate the US, you can find here. You may not have as many options. You may not have as much advanced help. So, for example, for me personally, I was a gym buff in the US, and the type of training I got and access to trainers was par excellence. And in India, the same type of trainer will come at some insane price point. I may not even find such a trainer here. I may not even find that type of equipment, advanced equipment.
Yeah.
So it's not like you won't find a trainer, you won't find the trainer.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
it's more about, yes, you have choice. You may not have a range of choice, and your range also may be limited.
Yeah. Fair. Let's switch gears to also other topic, visa. We talked about visa, which is obviously the largest cross section of people who decide to move to India. I've seen situations where the green card backlog is so huge that people keep waiting and then they just give up. With visas, we know that in the past few years, even to get a visa or renew a visa or even get a visa appointment has been such a huge pain that people get really frustrated. And even for their parents or their loved ones to come to US to visit them has been increasingly frustrating experience, right? Is moving to India an option? Is helping them even in terms of their mental health or otherwise?
Yeah. So, with respect to these issues about, appointment timings and parents' visa getting rejected, and welcome to immigrant life, especially US immigrant life. It is so typical. Every decade, there is some rule or some kind of, visa-related problem that Indians go through. And you've seen the resilience of the Indian diaspora is no matter what obstacles you put in their way, they will grin through it, even if they are very sad. So these are things that are not pushing people really, they're not like giving up everything and coming back because, oh, I have I'm not finding the right slot of my visa appointment. But in the long term, if you see what it's doing to their mental health, is definitely something that gets elevated once they move to India, because now you don't have this pressure of this existential pressure in India of you can just be here, be yourself,
Makes sense. Yeah, and that really,
It's
yeah,
calmer.
that really takes down a lot of drill about okay, my visa needs to get renewed. I need to change job. In fact, changing the job itself, right? We talk about the recent layoffs, and that has been. I've seen situations recently where with layoff people have seriously considered moving back to India with all the growth opportunities that India is also offering, right? I think I think I've seen that people are now seriously considering, well, why struggle with visa issues when you can get a similar job? And let's also talk about in that case the opportunities in India, right? We know the reasons now. Let's talk about the process or the after effects. So once they move to India, I've heard you somewhere or I've read that you said it takes around 2 to 3 years to even settle down and get blend again into the culture, because if they have worked for 5 years, 10 years in the US, going back, even though it's their home country, it's often a cultural difference. They need to bridge that as well. So what are the expectations that they need to set realistically, right? What expectations do you suggest those who are considering to move due to growth opportunities or salary expectations or whatsoever?
Absolutely. So what I would say is completely depends on your personality. Now, what happens is that at least I can give you my experience having worked in Google in the United States. These type of companies, the Silicon Valley companies, FANG companies, their culture is more around work focused. You don't have to worry about pleasing people, or you don't have to worry that I need to get my job done, so my colleague has to like me. Otherwise, it will not get done. You don't have to even worry about that. Just do your job and things start flowing. We totally miss the people aspect in the US, which is big in India. Dealing with people, knowing what to say when is a big part of Indian culture. And that is where NRIs are not they know it's going to be not a problem, but they know it's a skill that they have to build, or they should have, and that's where the gap comes in. Now, why I said it's personality related is because some people are either born with those skills, or they grew up in an environment, home or city, where they cultivated this skill. So, for example, I grew up in Pune, very sheltered life between home and school. I literally never even went to buy vegetables. So even up to till today, vegetable vendors can really make a fool out of me. But I have friends who grew up in Delhi. They will not, they know how to handle themselves. If somebody messes with them, they know how to catch somebody by the collar and give them one thappad, very street smart people. So these people may not have as much problems as someone like me who was in Google for 10 years, and you become so sensitive. My thin is my skin is very thin. So anything somebody says, it really skins me very quickly. And that is something I had to learn. So for me, Delhi was a crash course in dealing with people. It is a crash course on survival. And any company I have worked in India has been, I have learned more in 3 months in any company in India about dealing with people than in, say, 3 to 13 years in the US. So you have to very carefully understand your tone, what questions you're asking, when to ask questions, when not to ask questions, what type of questions to ask. You have to learn that, and that is something that NRIs totally don't realize, that it's a huge part of their work. And that's where all this, the concerns come in. I've heard the culture is so bad in India. How will I survive? I've heard there's very bad work-life balance. So all this comes down to that one thing, which is dealing with people.
Yeah, and I think what I can think of is that now with all the remote culture, people actually think that well, I'm working remote here in at my home in the US, right? And I go back to India, I can still work with the people in the US or even in India. The fact that, and it makes sense in, like you said, 3 months in India versus 3 years in the US, is because you deal with far more number of people in India versus like if I interact with 50 people within a week here, 50 people in a day in India is so normal to interact with. And you have to keep changing your approach, whether it's a plumber coming at home versus an official at your office, or every different person has to be dealt differently. I think, in fact, with negotiation, I know I was very good, or I was good, decent enough at negotiations in India. But now if I go, I'm like, well, just pay it and get it done, because you probably don't feel that urge or that ability to go back and forth with shopkeepers in general, right?
They could name any price to me, to be honest. I like this polka dotted cups in some kind of tea place here. And I told that lady I'll take it. And she said, okay, 750 rupees. And I'm like, yeah. And she starts packing it and then she packs one more. And I'm like, two. So it turns out it was two for 750 rupees. I was so coolly like, yeah, one, like no idea about value and price, nothing. Like it's not even something that's coming. And she could have easily just sold me one, but she was a good woman, so she just laughed it off. But here's an example of not having any idea of what, even after this, what is my seventh year.
Wow. So you're still ramping up soon.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
keep making these sort of mistakes or other, it's just like I have decided to live life in a certain way where I don't want money to come in between what I like and what I want, which we do in the US a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So again, I think that psychological shift is important because when you come to the US, you as in, yeah, when you come to the US, you are thinking in terms of rupees and you're trying to save every penny, thinking, well, I don't know when I'll go back home. And well, this is costly. Basically, it's 80 times costlier, right? When you see something. Versus when you go back to India, also, you have an ability to probably start ramping down and say it's in rupee terms and not dollar terms. So you may feel it's 800 rupees, like you said, probably just $10, versus it's actually 800 rupees, which needs to be converted accordingly. And this also brings to the next question, right? The purchasing power parity. So we know with the recent, at least I'm talking specifically about IT and technology. I'll also try to touch on other domains, other industries, but with people when they are thinking of growth in India, right? And at least in the past 3 years, we know that the salaries in India have become pretty competitive. I was wondering, does that is that expectation right in the first place, or what mental model should people? Because there have been so many debates. I've been part of so many debates, discussions, online, offline. That well, this is why it's better here. This is why it's better there. Because so, what has been your mental model? What do you suggest people in terms of setting the right expectations for salary in general? Yeah.
So I am the right person to answer this because I have gone through a range of salaries, ranging from like something like 6 lakh per annum to
Rupees.
rupees per annum salary, which is nothing, to the regular market rate that I would go or. So I've had the range of salaries, and I've lived within that. And for me, the feeling that I got for each of them is that I never felt poor. I never felt like I can't afford something or I shouldn't buy something. Of course, maybe I would think twice about buying an iPhone in India, but then what happens is then when I'm visiting the US, I end up buying the iPhone there, and then I don't really care about how much it costs, because it's like, okay, I'm going to use it, and anyway you save a lot of money when you buy it in the US. Now the thing is, in the US it was ulta, because no matter what I was earning, I was treating my income as a current account. So for whatever my circumstances were, I was not earning much. Google was not a very good paymaster, especially at that time, and I'm not a software engineer. So my salary was significantly low, and the trajectory was also not like how my friends are earning like $12,000 to $15,000 a month. Now, when you're earning that level, I just do want to point out that not everyone earns so much. It's my Silicon Valley circle of friends who are earning like 10, some are earning $25,000 a month. Now, when you're earning that much, now you are looking at a parity where it's going to be really hard for Indians to match up to that, because see, how much is $15,000 comes to like 10-12 lakh rupees a month, and you'll be saving also a nice amount in that. But in India, you may not get that level of salary, and although you may save more in India than you save in the US. So it depends on your lifestyle and how much you're spending in the US versus in India. But even with any kind of salary in India, you sort of feel rich. It's just how much are you saving, like so these are, I will split it into two things. One is what you feel, and one is what you can literally save, that monthly sip that you do into your mutual fund or whatever. That is, these two things are what you have to consider. And people have this thinking that they should earn 1 crore because a number sounds good. But the question is, you don't really need that much unless you're doing some crazy kind of monthly expenses. So.
Okay, so I mean the fact that it is definitely personal, right? It's definitely varies person to person, family to family, needs to needs, which kind of makes sense. But what is one important thing that they should consider that really helps them at least start thinking about where to start on that parity? You see, like, okay, is there any equivalence? Basically, have you found any equivalence between, okay, 100K versus this much? What sort of expectations they should? Because the point is, it's an emotional ride, because like you said, you started from one salary range and you went to the higher salary range, but it's an emotional ride. Your heart may sink. I've seen people who say, well, it's uh, it was disappointing when they were interviewing in India, right? And they realized, okay, this is what they were expecting and this is what they got. Uh, so is there any mental model, anything that you think is a starting point for them to consider?
Yeah. So there are two answers to this. One is that move with whatever salary you get, because eventually you'll get to the salary that you want. So this is a long game. It's not I want to jump right into this exact salary I want because I want to be able to tell my friends that I got this salary. And the second thing is, if you just look at how expenses are in a city, like say maybe Bangalore, I think a lakh 0.5 per head per month is a very nice amount to have. Because, with that, I can pay my rent. I can take Uber every day without thinking. I can spend on every day, I can go to Nykaa.com or whatever. It's the equivalent for online shopping clothes here, and buy whatever I want, and spend like 5,000 rupees on jewelry or a kurta or something like that without worrying about, oh my god, my tank is getting empty. So I think that amount is a lakh to lakh 0.5 per head is pretty good. Again, depends on your expenses. I think men spend less for there's so much to spend on. But then, like, I don't drink. I'm not a regular drinker. For those who go out and drink, they will have a different set of expenses. I don't eat out a lot. There are friends who eat from Swiggy every day. So that's a different set of expenses, but still lakh 0.5 mein ho jayega per head per month.
And I believe when they talk to you or when you counsel them, these things come up, and that's where you are able to help them with the right expectations or a right understanding. I think that totally makes sense. Fair. And let's also talk about those people for whom moving back to home did not work out for any reason. Any examples, any thoughts you have on what? Yeah. So maybe if you can share a story or some reasons.
So there are so many people who really, really want to move to India, but they are married and they have kids. Married to someone who really is like, I don't even want to talk about this. Let's park this behind a door and shut that door and just walk away. And these people are really, they are suffering. Because there's obviously a range, that there's the type who are like, yeah, I wish I'd gone to India. But there are the type who are like thinking about India every day. It's in their blood. They're just so craving their motherland and they can't move. And so my heart goes out for these people. So if anybody who is like that and is listening to this podcast, there are ways to deal with this. When you resign to the fate that you will have to always live abroad, there are ways to sort of, take sabbaticals, uh, stay in India for extended period of time and go back. And to these people, I would say it is obviously it is great to come here, and it's the stress is much less. But there can be a point where you are like, okay, you know what, bas ho gaya.
Go back.
It's kind of like what do you say? It's like basically going to Silicon Valley. Like I remember when I was so obsessed with California when I used to live in Atlanta, and I was like, that this is it. This is the place I want to be. I was so obsessed with it. I really wanted to move for many, many years. And then I moved. And then after that, after 6-7 years, where was I? I was like, bus ho gaya. I want to leave.
Yeah.
So India can also be like that. So I want people to sort of, if you feel stuck in the US, try to fast forward and imagine that you've come to India and you're living a life here. Excuse me. You're living a life in India, and then you come to a point where like, okay, I've tried everything. I've had all the Golgappas I could. I've experienced all this sort of life. I've spent time with my parents, and now I feel like, अच्छा ही तो था US, चलो वापस चलते हैं. So that can also happen. And happens with a lot of people. Whether they move back or not, that's a different case. But I can assure you that just like a toy, I'm not comparing a country to a toy, but when you get something new, a new Mercedes, BMW, it feels great, but then you get used to it after some time.
Yeah, and also if we talk about the growth story, like people want to be part of the growth story. I'll quote an example from the investing style. Yeah, you were also trying to give that relationship, right? A growth company, a growing company like a startup, working at a startup because the challenges, the pace is different versus at a big company, a blue chip company, for example. So if I compare India as a growth engine, as a country where people are expecting to be part of that growth and contribute, and that part in your book really touched me actually. People want to help and probably they need help. That part was very interesting, right? So if they are thinking that, well, India is growing, I want to be a part of that growth story. Maybe I start early and I get a good raise, I get a good growth in India, considering the pace of growth. Versus here in the US, they may not feel that adrenaline rush, right? So what I was wondering is is that real? Is that something they should have the right? Is that their right assumption? Or it's like they'll come to India, they'll feel, well, I don't think I'm able to contribute, or I don't think I'm as helpful, or I'm not seeing the growth I was expecting. What has been
Absolutely.
your experience?
Yeah, so here I would say that, see, in India, when do you feel like you're a part of the growth? When you are a founder yourself and you're building something, and you're raising funds for something that you have to build, get that product market fit, uh, go to market, and then scale, build and scale. Now, for founders, this is a very exciting space. But how many people can be founders? How many people want to be founders? I've actually have readers might want to go to yourstory.com and search for my name in it. There's an article I've written about what I call entrepreneurship porn. That NRIs feel like, oh, wow, I want to be part of this journey and it's so sexy and all of that. But it's not that easy, and it is not what you think it is. So I want people to wake up and understand what it actually means to be a part of this growth. So here's the thing. Out of, say, 100 NRIs who are saying, I want to be a founder, how many of them are actually capable of being a founder? It's not easy. It's not easy. Yeah. So I won't even go into the what kind of skill sets you need. I guess the readers, listeners are smart enough to know that not everyone can be a founder who wants to be. So out of those 100 people, maybe there'll be 1 or 2 people who actually have an idea and they can come and be capable of doing that. All power to you. But that person who has this as a fantasy, which is here I'm feeling stuck, वही घिसा पिटा, गाड़ी में टोयोटा गाड़ी में बैठो, ऑफिस जाओ, वही घिसा पिटा, team meeting about some stupid color of the button kind of job where which is not doing any this thing to humanity. Instead, why don't I go to India and then get employment for so many people? But what will happen is that you will end up coming to a company where you will be doing back-end infrastructure for the color of button which US people will be doing. So you might come to a place which is probably even quote unquote worse because the culture is worse, and you're also doing more backend, because traditionally Indian companies are kind of the back office, although that's changing now. That's changing a lot.
It is definitely, yeah.
Definitely. So, I mean, there are a lot of companies with some great work, and they are building products for India. So you get a chance to do some really, really good works. So now it completely depends on your luck and the company you've applied to and your skill set and everything like that. But I do want people to wake up and realize that, see, when you're in India, so for example, I work in HSR right now, which is the startup sort of capital of Bangalore. It's not what you say anecdotally, you throw a stone and you little hit a startup.
Yeah.
There, it doesn't feel like how, in the early days of Google, when we used to go to Charlie's Cafe, I don't know if you heard Charlie's Cafe, is super famous, building 42, the main campus of Google, that was burning with energy. Like when you go there, you feel like you're at the center of some kind of universe, which is world famous. And you feel like, wow, I'm doing something cool. But here in Bangalore, when you're sitting here like, oh my God, you're there, there's a cow there, there are stray dogs, and there's that vegetable vendor sitting next to you. Like, how is this the center of the universe? No. So you're not going to feel like, wow, I'm changing the world. But what this means to NRIs is that keep striving to find what you are meant for on this earth. That is your answer. Your answer is not, I want to be part of the growth journey. Your answer is, I want to do what I'm meant for in this earth. And that is what India provides you, is a freedom and flexibility to find that and do that.
Yeah, and there are pros and cons to it, right? Like the fact that you can be in India and do all of that and experiment all of that. I'll put the word experiment or try that is far more possible, given there's no visa constraints, given there's more support, from family, etc. Versus here in the US, you probably are a little more constrained, and you have to go by the book, or you have to go slow, and you can't really move around, right? And circling back to one point you discussed in the starting, in India, then if you're considering founding or even working on attractive work, attractive projects, the fact that you have to deal with people, it's not the same as you were dealing over in the US. So that dynamics changes drastically, right? And
I'll
I
give you an
think,
example.
yeah.
I'm hiring for marketing roles. Out of 5 interviews that we set up on Google Hangouts in the calendar, 4 didn't show up.
You mean from the US or?
No, this is in
okay.
India.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine the time that my recruiter wasted in calling them up, setting the interviews, the time that I wasted in just literally getting up from my desk, going to a meeting room, opening everything, waiting there for 5 minutes. And this happens so often that now I don't trust who's going to come online. So I keep doing work at my desk till the person comes in, and then I go, this is the level it's come down to.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, obviously that operating model changes, the way people operate changes. Okay. And, I want to do something fun. It's totally unexpected for you, probably a surprise, but I'm sure it will be fun, right? Something like what Kejo does with Karanjor on rapid fire, right? I think I want to touch some of that. So what I'll do is I'll tell a word, and I want you to instantly reply with US or India. What comes to your mind first when you hear that word, right? Maybe it gives a sense of, okay, how much more Indian now you are, or how much still America is left within you, right? So let's do this rapid fire, something fun. Cuisines. You have to be quick. You have
Oh,
to be
indeed.
quick. Whatever first word comes to your, like, when you're talking about cuisines, uh, does America come first, trying different cuisines, or India, or whatever word I'm saying, what comes first to your mind? What would you prefer, trying that or doing that in India versus US? So your experience with that word. So that's
Okay.
that's the game.
Right, right. Done. Okay. Indian food.
Yeah, cuisines, Indian, or would you try different cuisines in India or US, that way? Or okay, I'll
Okay.
leave it to you, your perception, but the word is mine. US or
Okay.
India, cuisines.
So US is good for trying different cuisines, but India is great for like tasty food. So South Indian food, I can hog on it all the time.
Okay, another rule, no, don't be diplomatic. Whatever first word comes, that's it.
Okay, done.
Right, weather, what you love,
India,
weather,
yeah, any day Indian weather.
roads,
US,
traffic,
US.
nightlife.
Ooh, US, New York.
I would love India probably, these days. It's so much of vibe in India. I think I
I'm
liked
into
it.
Indian nightlife, to be honest, because I don't have friends. All my friends are married with kids.
Oh, okay. That's a different discussion. Vacations,
US,
hotel amenities,
India,
customer service,
India,
conversations,
India,
festivities,
India,
purchasing power,
US,
health,
India,
Medicare,
India.
shopping.
Shopping,
Shop.
United States of America. Oh my God. United States shopping.
All right. Grocery shopping.
India,
Okay. Window shopping.
United States,
Deals.
United States,
Clubs, nightlife, like,
New
yeah.
York,
Job satisfaction.
India.
Okay, I think I caught you there. You had to think a little more. Fine. No, so looks like, yeah, you still have 50% of US left in you, and there could be some reasons that we can pull you back to US, or there could be uh, yeah. That is fun. I think, yeah, these were some of the thoughts I had. But again, I think you talked about escape velocity to wrap up our conversation, right? You talked about escape velocity in your book. What really is that escape velocity for people to decide whether to come back to India versus maybe go back to US if it's not working in India? Both sides.
So in from US to India, it's sort of again a very slow sort of it's never vertical climb, it's usually slow escape. And then there usually one trigger incident that happens that makes people move. And in some cases where these are happy moves, that trigger may be like, you know what, by my father's birthday, I want to be in India or something like that. I've seen many such cases. So those type of triggers, they're very slow burns, and that's why NRIs are it's very hurtful, because it's not something you can make so easily. It takes a long time. So unfortunately, the escape velocity is not very easy. It's based on external circumstances. It's a khichdi of things that come together where you're like, you know what, bas ho gaya. Pass ho gaya. And for India, it's a bit of the reverse, where the escape velocity is slightly easier, I would say, because the attraction, or rather depending on what you want out of living abroad, that can be much clearer and faster.
Objective. Yeah, much objective.
Because for some people, it's like, the child is moving into a certain 12th grade, or, first engineering, and you want to move. Or you have hit, like I've seen cases where people in a FANG company have reached the highest position in India, and after this, they can't go anywhere. So they've moved lateral transfer to the US just for their career. And the other is, maybe you don't have family in India anymore. Your parents passed away or something, or you just so not happy with the work culture that you go back, and these are cases where they shouldn't have moved in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or
Where
things have changed. Yeah, fair.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, it's very rare, because the thing is, if you really move in the first place and it's meant for you, you will adjust with that change. But for many people, they shouldn't have come only in the first place. They're just living in regret. And for them, it's just a very daily irritation. Ki bas, okay, I don't like this place, I'm going back.
Yeah. So they keep judging every day, and then eventually it all piles up and get frustrated. And it depends if the doors are still open or not. But yeah, totally makes sense. All right,
Absolutely.
I think we are almost at the end of our conversation, Nupur. So it was really fun talking to you. A lot of interesting points came up. Any last minute closing thing you want to say to your audience?
Absolutely. So for the NRIs listening to this, if you are in denial about your life in general, have a good hard look at where you are. I feel like Indians don't ask themselves hard questions. And some people are like, nahi, mujhe India jana, I want to go to India, I want to go to India. But they're in denial that, actually they'll never move. And I think just being very honest with yourself about what you like and what you want and what you're going to do, I think that'll serve you only better. And also don't if you're not happy in the US, just don't keep dragging it too much there. It's like India is not that scary and bad that people talk as if patani like they're going into a dungeon or some kind of jail. No,
Yeah.
this is like, it's so much fun. Like working here is fun. It's hard, but it's also a lot of fun. So just don't act as if India is going to be a step down. It is a different universe altogether, and treat it as an adventure.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Nupur, for
You.
those closing statements. I hope our viewers find it useful. And there's still a lot more I want to cover, but given the constraint of time, hopefully maybe next time, let's see how people respond. It I have so much more to talk to you. This topic is really exciting always. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, have a good day.